When it comes down to it, I love me a good shoot 'em up that lets me blow apart everything in sight. I am the Game Collector, and this is Second Opinion Games, and today I'm going to show you 3 overhead shooters that I just keep on coming back to.
Second Opinion Games.
One of the first overhead shooters I ever played is a total classic. It's Smash TV, an iconic game show where you're pitted against thousands of enemies and lets you pick up super over-the-top power-ups, money, and even toasters. Not to mention super VCRs. If you make it past the first level, then you'll be picking up cars and luggage and extra stuff like that. Now, one of the big drawbacks about this game that every single level takes a couple minutes to make it through. So it's a really long game and you get really tired of it really quickly. Unless you're playing co-op with a friend, in which case then you'll probably make it a few levels into the game before you start getting a little fed up. The controls are really simple. They're just basically a twin-stick shooter, using the face buttons on the Super Nintendo control pad to shoot in the different directions. A combination of buttons could even have you shooting at angles. Now, the power-ups are one of the major draws in this game, outside of the babes, because they are one of the big draws as well. And of course, the announcer loves the babes just as much as I do. And he has some pretty iconic lines like, "I'd buy that for $1," or "Big money, big prizes, I love it." And that really makes you feel like you're in a game show. The bosses are actually really cool here too. And the first one of the game is truly iconic. He is a giant mechanized beast, and you just have to blow his freaking head off. And when you do, heads fly like everywhere. And also, this gets a little gruesome at times. Just your common death animation doesn't seem too bad, but as you play through the game, you could be electrocuted and even set on fire, and the exposed ribcage of this boss is pretty darn yuck. I cannot believe that this game made it past the Super Nintendo censors back in the day. Keep in mind, this is at a time that Mortal Kombat made pretty much everyone go crazy in the arcades, and the Congress had to pull up a special panel just to curtail that just quite a bit. Thank God they did, because otherwise video games today would just be so violent, I probably wouldn't know what to do with myself.
I'd buy that for $1.
A couple of years went by and I picked me up a Virtual Boy at KB Toys for about $30 because they got discounted hard after the massive flop that was the Virtual Boy. Probably because it could only be played in red and black, and people weren't really sure if this was a console or a handheld. And even to this day, I hear people argue this fact again and again. Let's just say it's both. It's Nintendo's first hybrid system. So Jack Brothers was made by Atlas, which makes it an immediate collector's item. You play as Jack Frost, Jack Daniels, and Jack Skeleton. I know Jack Daniels wasn't really one of them, but just go with it here. Now, Jack Skeleton has a really short-range sword, but he unleashes a very devastating attack. Each of these characters also have screen-clearing bombs that do their thing. And they take quite a bit of damage away from bosses as well, which is probably what I recommend saving the bombs themselves for. Now, you might notice that you have no life bar, just a timer, and that's part of the story of the entire game. Now it's October 31st, and these people are trapped trying to get back to Halloween Town or something, and the portal to their dimension closes at midnight, so it's a race against the clock. Every time you get hit, a couple seconds come off, and things get really tight. Now, admittedly, I only play this game around once a year, usually on Halloween itself, so I really get the feel of the game. And essentially, it's an overhead shooter, and it can actually be played as a twin-stick shooter, because the Virtual Boy had 2 D-pads, which lets you play like that. Or you can just use the buttons and shoot in the standard direction that you're facing. It's up to you. Now, you collect keys and fall down pits, and you just keep on working your way down until you come to a boss, and then you have to kill him. I love the Halloween theme, and there's actually a 4th playable character if you manage to beat the game with all of the other characters. So, secrets galore, just like Atlas seems to always do. So you might notice quite a bit of text on the screen, so you might think, because it's an overhead view, that it might be a little bit like Zelda, with a whole storyline and all of that. But no, this is little fairy that comes to talk to you is just giving you advice on the floor that you're on. See, it slowly introduces different obstacles and characters to overcome. So every single floor you drop into, it gives you a little hint about that level. And you have to use all the skills that you learned in order to beat the game. So if you wanted to pick up the Japanese version, it would be a lot cheaper, but you would totally miss out on those little tips, which honestly don't tell you that much. So if you really want, save the couple dollars. Otherwise, the American version will set you back pretty much a fortune. Last time I checked, this game sold for like $100. And even though I do believe it's worth it because there's really not that many Virtual Boy games, and quite frankly, this is the second best one behind Wario. So you pretty much have to get it for your collection if you're into the Virtual Boy. And it's also one heck of an overhead shooter. Fast forward a few years later, and I was wondering what Super Nintendo games I might have missed out on that came from Japan. And boy, was there a doozy. Gunman's Proof is one of the best overhead shooters I have ever played. And it also feels just like Zelda, only quite a bit easier. Now, this is a very kids game, and you could beat it in about 5 hours. But the story is actually pretty good. Your dad is pretty abusive as well. He likes to beat the crap out of this snotty little kid. And aliens have infected the Earth, and creatures are just all over the place. So it's really not safe for little kids to go run around. But of course, you do with your gun that some guy just gives you in the saloon. So, thank God for strangers giving guns out to kids. Otherwise, the world may never be saved. There is some helpful aliens along with the sheriff. They both tell you where the different creatures are hiding out and can give you a valuable intel. After the very first dungeon, you could unlock a horse that you could find when you pick up a carrot on the overview map. He doesn't make you invincible or anything, he just makes you run around really, really fast because killing most of the enemies are completely optional. The dungeons themselves don't really give you the tool that you need to progress through the world. Instead, sometimes you'll pick up a crucifix at the town, or maybe even find a helpful person to teach you a new skill, like a thunder fist to punch through boulders. And there's also tons of different guns. You might start off with a 6-shooter that has a standard attack of charging it up and firing, but you could quickly pick up bazookas and shotguns and machine guns alike. Hey, certain bosses respond better to different weapons. And depending on what weapons you have access to, means you could pick and try them out just the same. The machine gun works fine against almost every creature in the entire game, but this one boss I pretty much had to pick up the shotgun for because he has 3 forms at once, and if you shoot the wrong one, it just does no damage to him at all. So every little thing comes to play perfectly in this one complete package. So how come we never got this game here in the States? Well, chances are it's because it was made by a very small team late in the Super Nintendo's life cycle, so it probably really wasn't worth it to release it here. However, it's also one of the best Super Nintendo games I've probably ever played, and it's one that I'm going to keep playing. Especially because it's a somewhat over-the-head shooter, and I just happen to love that genre. So Smash TV, Gunmans Proof, and Jack Brothers. 3 great games that I could pick up any time of the day and have a blast playing. And of course, that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this review. I had a great time making it. I did have to use an emulator for the Virtual Boy, but you know what? I do have a complete collection for that system and of quite a few homebrew games that were made into cards for me, including Bound High, which is a great one, but that's one for another time. And any day that I could spend some time with my Super Nintendo, hey, that is a good day. So tell me about your forgotten about or missed out on gems of the Super Nintendo. I really want to know because, quite frankly, I'm having a really hard time coming up with a good top 10 hidden gems list for the Super Nintendo because I just know the library so well, I can't even think about anymore which games are hidden, which ones aren't. So if you have any ideas, please let me know. I'm really struggling on it. So until later, I will see you again, guys.